Hey guys, it's Chris, and welcome to Toneful, the self-actualization video podcast, episode number 54, Go Through the Levels. So this week, guys, I want to talk about the idea of how every artistic path that you can take in life, every medium, everything that you could choose to have as a hobby, in one way or another, it does lead back to a level of self-discovery that is very similar no matter which path we take. So what I'm trying to say, in smaller words, is no matter what hobby you choose, no matter what you choose to do in your life, it is actually leading you to self-discovery. And if you don't find that in your hobbies and you don't find that in the projects that you're taking on, you might be missing out. So when you take a look at the path of a musician, and one of the funny things that I love about being a musician is you're kind of in the midst of this whole line of people who are doing this same hobby / profession that you want to do. You're all playing your musical instruments. You're all either writing to some extent or learning someone else's writing. And there's a natural comparison that happens. There's a natural part of that progress that becomes kind of like a path of the musician, so to speak. That no matter who you are, no matter which instrument you choose to learn, that there's a certain path cut out for that. And in a small way, there are parallels to anyone else who chooses to do that same hobby as you, that you'll look at them and go, you know what, I do understand. And so that could be the key a song is written in. Many guitar players' first song is a B minor key song. I've noticed that a lot of my friends would start with a song in that key. And a lot of us will laugh about it because we'll talk about, we were trying to write this. A lot of times the song is supposed to be like thought-provoking or emotional. So a lot of musicians want to do that as a first song. So you see a lot of B minor key first songs for guitar, which kind of makes me laugh. I've seen this very evident in my students as well. Again, this is my own evidence, but it's something I've noticed. And the path of nerding out on the particular gear that is used in any profession. So as musicians, artists, we're all get to nerd out over the aspects about, our paintbrushes or our guitar picks or our drumsticks or all the tools that we use in the trade for normal day to day. Those are things that, we're deeply affected by. And while all these parts of every hobby are really fun, the song that, the first song we write, what key it's in, or if we're using the same guitar pick or not, or if we utilize the same technique and how we place our body in our hobby, no matter what it is, or how we focus our mind in a certain way, all these things are really important. And they are very much part of the path of each individual craft. There's a path that they take. But the path that I'm talking about for this overall episode is actually something much more internal. And it's about how we uncover ourselves. And what I would hope that anyone could take away from their hobbies, or what anyone could take away from their musical life, as an artist, a life as an artist, a life of any medium, is that you allow it to help you uncover yourself. There are certain base level truths that can be revealed by any hobby that we have. If you look in every single craft or every single type of, profession, there are people who are traditionalists. And so some people hold this mindset that if they are able to maintain the status quo, whether that is to retain the standards of the past and make sure that those are upheld to a qualifying level, or if that means that they're kind of looking at it as if from the standpoint that they view the beauty from those traditional standards. So, say we still, wrote music like Mozart, or still, and use that instrumentation and use that type of sound. They would not, if we took our music back to 1735, I'm pretty sure they would be not really know what to do with what they were hearing. Could you imagine taking back a Justin Bieber song, or, even crazier, a Polyphia song or something like that? And they're just like, dude, what is this? They would have a very interesting time hooking onto that. But the main point of it is there are traditionalists in all these paths. And some people find out they are traditionalists through their working on music. Maybe they look up to certain composers, or maybe they find out in life that they're a traditionalist, that they like their room to be set up in a way that's very, culturally normal, or they're very set up on their life being balanced in a way that seems normal, so they're a traditionalist. They do things like how things have been done. And some people who, when they start working on their art, they start working on their hobby, they discover that they're an extremist. Some people are actually looking for everything that's new. Some people are looking for everything that is pushing the envelope in some sort of way, which means that they can be a groundbreaker in whatever field that they're choosing to do. Some people are really looking for that avenue to be able to explore themselves that way, where the traditionalist is looking to throttle back and kind of keep things where they are, and they check things that kind of fall outside the bounds. The extremist is looking actually for the things that went outside the bounds, and they're looking for those things. They're looking for that, and they're going, hey, what's that's outside the limit of what's normal in any variable? The people who probably made new power tools were probably somebody who said, hey, I don't want to have to screw with my screwdriver all day in each individual screw hand twisting motion. I want to, push a button and it gets drilled in. And so you have to think that the extremist is the person who's pushing that, the person who's creative, the person who's looking for things outside the bounds. Another type of personality that you might be and you might discover through doing your hobby, through working on music and being an instrument kind of person, is that you might be a historian. Some people find out in their life that they collect items, and there are many guitar players who I know who are wonderful players, but not only are they wonderful players, they have incredible guitar collections or music collections, whether that's albums or things used to make music or different types of instrumentation, because they value the history of music. And there are a lot of people who, in their hobby, they might come to become a collector. Like there's a lot of people who are into cars, and a lot of people who are into, skateboards, whatever the hobby may be, and they will have collections of these vintage items, and they will look at them and they can revere the time era they're made from. They can see the hallmarks that make each individual time period stand out from each other, and that is a very important thing to be able to have in the community of human beings. There are people who are historians. They tell stories. They tell these are the people at your family gatherings who are like, oh, remember when grandpa did this? And they tell the whole story again, and it's perfect. It's almost verbatim, because they are a storyteller, and they take pride in having those details and telling that story and being there for their family and their close ones in that way. And again, as you see these personality traits, we can keep pulling out more and more. But the point of what I'm saying is that through our habits and our artistic choices and our hobbies, we uncover a lot of things about who we are, our personality type, the different kind of places in the fitting of that hobby. So like I said, if you're an extremist, if you're this, if you're that, you kind of fit in the bubble in a certain way in that grouping. And then, another thing you're going to start to learn about yourself is your work ethic. You're going to start looking at people around you and going, well, for this amount of time, look at where they are, look at where I am. And you're able to kind of uncover within yourself your real attitude and your real ability towards your work ethic. Some people are always constantly busy, but are they really doing the work that they need to be doing? That could be a question that could be learned from someone who works really hard, but maybe doesn't see the results they want. Or it could be someone who's going, hey, I'm getting all these results. I'm noticing everyone else is struggling. How am I viewing it? What am I doing that's making it different for me? And that makes it a great experience for me. And some people are more of a steady horse. They have a certain way of working through things that's maybe a little more methodical and planned out, but they get results too. And they're happy with their results because it's gained through effort. So there's a reciprocity in their process that says, hey, for this much effort, you kind of get this back. And so being either the outliers where you're good really fast and then you kind of struggle to know why, but you just know you're good fast. And then people who are struggling, they put a lot more time than others, but they're still struggling on maybe fundamental things, or they're struggling on maybe some missing elements in their education that is making it really hard for them to like piece together what they're trying to do. This is another thing you can learn about yourself. So it's like your work ethic and like how you take in information and your learning style. Again, there are people who do every hobby. There are musicians who are more visual. There are artists who are more auditory. And you're thinking, well, the artist is trying to paint something that they're looking at in the musician, so why would they have the opposite skill? But the opposite maybe main learning method doesn't change your ability to do a certain skill or hobby, but it's about translating that. And again, your work ethic and how you gather information is a part of that. It's how you translate what you see and what you're doing into something that's usable for you. And I think a lot of people have a hard time with this skill because they don't get to work on it very much. And, another thing that you start finding out in your hobby is not only where your personality is and your learning style and your work ethic, but you start finding out what your social personality is like. Some of us might be an extremist, but even though we're an extremist, we're really inward. Even though our style, maybe the way we choose to do the hobby is outward, maybe the personal person is inward. You know what I mean? And this is something to really understand, because when you go to events or you're meeting people at, like, for example, for me, when I would go to the NAMM show, and you would meet so many guitar players who, to me, the most interesting thing was, I'd love to see them play. It's not that I don't love their music, I do. But I've always been obsessed with personalities. So when I see somebody and I get to kind of see how they are, to me, that's always the most revealing thing. That's the most beautiful thing I can see in a person is how they approach things and how they want things to be in life. You know what I mean? Like how what they're kind of aiming for, like the words that they choose to use when they describe things, or when they have an open part in a conversation, how they choose to present their idea, like the way that they choose to bring their self into that. It's always something I'm looking forward to. But that says a lot socially about a person that you do learn from a hobby. If you go to a meetup, a trade show, a band jam as a musician, or you go to an art showing as an artist, and you start realizing all these people present differently, like we talked about in last week's episode. You're unique. Why isn't your approach? So a lot of these people present themselves uniquely, and it's a fun thing, and it's something to learn from. But the main thing to take away from this episode is how our internal path along our hobby, no matter what hobby we choose, whether it's, again, watchmaking, guitar playing, songwriting for, like being a producer, painting, interior designer, stagecraft, playwright. You can take any hobby, okay? I can go on forever. Point is, it boils down to the things that it uncovers within ourself as we take the path spiritually. We're awakened. We're awakened to our inner selves. And if you take a moment, I'd love for you to maybe, if you're daring enough, write down 5 things and share them in the comments. If you make it to this point in the video, share it in the comments. 5 things that your hobby or that your music, I hope music, because I'm a nerd for that, but whatever you do, let me know 5 things that it's brought in your life that you would have never figured out without doing that hobby or without having your passion in life. And, you'll realize how much you've discovered yourself, and you'll realize how many of each other, if we were to really say that, we discover our self-value, where we fit in groupings, our learning style, who we are. Because as we reflect into the hobby, we're reflecting on ourselves. We're making decisions. As we learn to make decisions, our decision-making process becomes faster. As it becomes faster, we might notice why, because we've maybe really thought about our decisions, or maybe we look back on decisions we've made and go, wow, look at this similarity. I can follow that. I can trust that. But the point is like you discover more about you when you take the time to actually be engaged in your hobby, be engaged in your path. So you want to go through the levels. We want to earn each belt. We want to earn each point. We want to do our hobby where we can gain experience in that part of life and bring that back to other people with the knowledge that we've gained about ourselves. But not only have we gained a knowledge about ourselves, we've learned something that's universal, that if spoken to another person of another craft, within a moment they would go, I understand what you mean. I see where you're coming from. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Go through the levels. I really want to see all of you guys write in the comments if possible, because this is a special community full of really talented musicians, incredibly talented people. So I would love to hear from you guys. And above all else, stay toned and toneful.